Humanianity, a new religious call. Humanity, religion for us all. Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can be.
Hi, I'm Bill Van Fleet, and this is Humanianity Conversation number 85, recorded on November 16th, 2020. It is the 42nd recorded conversation with my friend Mike. We appear to have made a little more progress in coming to agreement regarding our different worldviews, my, quote, empiricist worldview, and Mike's, quote, solipsistic worldview. To some extent, the difference has to do with the usefulness of the worldview rather than its correctness. Our discussion continues.
Okay. From what I recall from last meeting was that we were making a lot of progress with getting to agreement with some things, specifically with regards to solipsism and do things exist, how to show that they exist. But we were still having some areas of disagreement there. And I don't recall exactly what that lack of agreement was.
Well, it seems to me that one of your main contentions is that that nothing exists other than what you believe exists. That may not be completely accurate.
No, that's not completely accurate.
Okay. Well, like for instance, you were saying at the time that people believed that the earth was flat, the earth was actually flat. And it's now the earth is round because we believe it's round. Am I correct about that?
I wouldn't exactly say it that way.
Okay.
I think you're using this is something I've mentioned several times. Embedded with your position is a certain definition of is. The earth is flat, the earth is round. That supposes that there is actually a truth independent of people's opinion of it. And I don't fully agree with that. Well, yeah. I shouldn't say that. Let me take back what I just said.
Okay.
I personally happen to agree with that. However, there is no argument that either of us have presented during these discussions that provides substantial proof, evidence, whatever you want to call it, to make that claim. So let me just clarify the difference. What I'm objecting to is us proceeding with a course of argument and presupposing certain things where they haven't been shown to be the case, haven't been shown to be true.
Okay, so in order to show that something is true, one has to proceed from something that one has accepted as being true. Is that correct or not?
Well, in one form or another, they could accept something as false, I guess, and proceed according to there, but there has to be some sort of belief with regards to showing what is true or not.
Okay, so given that requirement, are we not faced with an infinite regress?
Well,
in order to show that something is such and such, one has to proceed from something that is accepted. Well, you can say, well, why that? And then you would have to proceed from something else to show that. So,
Correct.
so we are we are always faced with that which we have to accept in our demonstration that something else is so.
Correct. And that is a main objection of solids. That's one of my main objections.
But see so therefore, that means that nothing can be demonstrated as being so.
No, it means that nothing can be demonstrated as being so without you believing in it. So subordinate and a necessary condition to something being so is that you believe it.
Well, but what this extends to is you're saying if you don't believe it, then it's not so. That
That's correct. Well,
okay.
again, you're appealing to this idea of this state of existence that is independent of anyone's experience of it. And that is something that, again, you attempted to show that as that external truth ideal by the ability for us to be incorrect and for us to predict something and either it be accurate or incorrect prediction. But we've shown that argument to be insufficient to show that something exists independent of someone's subjective experience. So that's no longer a satisfying argument that we could rely on, and we've not replaced it with anything. Until we do, I maintain that that appears to be the case. What appears to be the case is that belief is a necessary condition for something to exist. Maybe we could talk about what exist means and how I'm using it. I maintain that in order for something to exist outside of someone's subjective experience, the person has to believe in that.
Yeah, and you understand that that is.
Oh, you froze. Oh, there we go. You're back. So I heard you understand that. That's all I heard.
Okay. So, do you recall where we were at?
The last thing I recall was you said you realized that your position, you said you realized that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you realize that your position is a very strange one in almost anybody's way of looking at things.
Well, that's not disturbing or concerning to me at all.
Well, in my mind, it would be an indication that something could be non-optimal about it.
Well, we've gone through this, almost over and over and over again. And I think that despite how long we've been talking now, probably a year of these discussions, you've not been able to show through any kind of argument that my position is suspect or false, I should say, or false. And even more than that, it's not just me you're arguing against. You're arguing against philosophers, a philosophical position that has been in existence at least since Pyrrho, which is like for 1,500 years, and no philosopher has ever been able to really show in some kind of conclusive way that what I'm saying is not true. Doesn't mean what I'm saying is actually true. Again, I am pushing back on accepting something as just simply patently true when you're having a philosophical discussion without any kind of argument to justify it. That's my position I'm taking.
By the way, you're completely blacked out. I just see the windows behind you. Now I can see you.
I know what to do. I'll take care of it. But anyway, but that's so I think when you're arguing, yeah, I don't think my position is that strange at all. I think that it's
But for our
or it may be atypical for the common person on the street, but that's okay.
but for
That's
our
neither here nor there.
but for our purposes, I mean, you can make a statement about that, but and that means that it's totally hopeless to discuss any for us to take a look at the issue, because you say, well, there are all these philosophers that have agreed with you, but that's not been demonstrated, and so
But what's not been demonstrated?
that there are all these philosophers.
Well,
that
I wouldn't say that they don't agree with me. I agree with them.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not going to take the credit for philosophical mission of Kant or Piro or other people.
But these philosophers have engaged in complex positions, have presented complex positions and so forth. And as soon as you say, well, so-and-so agrees with me, then I have to go check so-and-so.
No. I don't. I never say that. What I am reacting to a statement you made that my position is somehow atypical. And it may be typical to the common person, but that's irrelevant because almost everything we're talking about during our conversations is atypical. So that's neither here nor there.
Not on my part.
I disagree with that.
I say that a person can be right or wrong. I
think elements of what you're saying, most common person would agree with. I think there are aspects of what I say also where the common person would agree. I said that there are things that you say also, and that I've said, that most people wouldn't agree with, but that's just simply the way it is. That's the nature of the topic we're talking about. So I don't say I'm right because XYZ philosopher agrees with me or I agree with them. What I'm stating, what I'm giving pushback on is a statement that my belief system is somehow atypical or unusual. It would not be atypical and unusual if I was in a postgraduate philosophical class or an undergraduate philosophical class. I think just because there's unfamiliarity with it, that's the only reason why it's considered atypical.
Okay, I will accept that that may indeed be true, but what we're trying to do is to take a specific look at these things, and I would say that I would bet that any of these philosophers would not be living according to a position that you are taking currently. That's not the way they would be living. But that would be. But then I can't support that. So let's.
You're not being able, but you're not being able to support it. You're mischaracterizing my position. But go ahead.
Okay, how am I mischaracterizing your position?
I think you are still speaking as if I have the belief, or what I'm saying is that reality does not exist outside my subjective experience. And that's not what I'm saying. And
what are you saying in its place?
I am saying that the only thing that you can know for certain exists is your subjective experience. Anything else, anything kind of outside of that sphere of your subjective experience is requires a belief in it. Let me just say it that way.
Well,
the only thing
requires a belief in it. there's something that is going wrong in our communication style or something here, it seems to me, but let's leave that aside. I to there are many different aspects to this that are going through my mind, and I don't know which is best to start with, but you're talking about your subjective experience. Okay, that I think we mean the same thing by that. Now, and that is that subjective experience in one sense is not a belief, but as you have that experience, you are believing it to be so. Does that sound right?
Well, no, I think the actual series of events is you have an experience. You are given an experience which consists of some kind of sensory data or some kind of act of will that executes, and then based on the results of that data, that sensory experience you might have, you then have a belief that you form. So it is possible for you to have a belief even about your subjective experience. That's not what I'm saying. I am talking about the inability for a human being to shut off sensory data. Okay, that is simply something that's given. A human being, you don't have to believe that I sense that I'm getting some kind of sense data when I touch my head. Your belief about what you're touching is a subordinate derivative, and that's what requires belief. But the actual fact that you're getting it's called qualia. This sense data you get, that doesn't require belief, and that is simply axiomatic. Even if I was in virtual reality, I would still be getting sense data.
Yes, and I believe I understand what you're saying about all of that. There is a little bit of a complicated or a little bit of a complication, and that is when you're looking at something and seeing it, there is a belief that it is there. That that is possibly modifiable. In other words, you could be seeing something and recognize it as an hallucination, such that you would say that even though I am seeing it, it is not there. So that would be, yes, go ahead.
Okay. This is an argument that has been brought about before in the subject of solipsism, and I agree with its answer. I don't think you can say that you see something and you believe it's there based on the way we are as adults. I think that to find out whether or not that is actually a learned behavior, or if that's embedded as some kind of axiomatic condition of humanity, you'd have to go back to an infant. And you'd have to go to you have to kind of be able to ask the infant and test the infant about whether or not they automatically assume what they see, what exists.
Okay,
And that's not possible, unfortunately, yet.
now none of that seemed at all correct to me using what I am meaning by
Oh,
what I am saying.
I misunderstood then. Yeah.
There's that possibility, yes.
Could you say that again in terms of it's, we see something and we believe that what we see exists.
No,
Would you?
that's not what.
Ah, okay.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. No, I would not. I would not disagree with that, but saying it a little bit differently, um, but probably meaning the same thing. Yeah. So when I take a look at the bottle on the table, when I am seeing the bottle on the table, I can't help but have the normal belief that indeed the bottle, quote, is there. And this is a part of uh, the set of concepts that are in the Mind Body Problem book on Humanianity.com, free.
It's okay for you to plug that here.
Yeah, yeah.
You won't be crucified.
But having to do with subjective experience and then our beliefs about what we are subjectively experiencing.
Mhm.
And those beliefs then constitute the subjective model. And then, of course, we have to clarify what a model means and so on. So I try to be very clear and consistent in the use of those terms. At any rate, it is possible for me to see something and say, well, that's interesting. Um, I see it there, but I happen to know that it is a mirage and is not really there, even though I'm seeing it. Um, um, yes, go ahead.
You see, now I think we have to ask ourselves the question, though, is the tendency that you have to automatically believe that when you see something, it exists, is that is that a learned behavior from experiences you had from a time you don't even remember when you were an infant?
Well, what I'm talking about uh, is would be at any time. It would not.
Okay, so you believe it's actually, you believe in a sense that that is axiomatic to the human experience, that even when an infant is born, when their visual acuity develops to the point where they can see something, there is just this uh, active, automatic, instinctual belief that that thing exists, is what you're saying, in the infant,
That it is there, yeah.
that it is there.
Yeah.
Well, that it exists, or it is there.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to try to say, that there may be some difference. I'm not sure that there is. But well, okay, the problem, I guess, is that I mean something relatively conceptual um, by it is there. It's that's um, it is belief that would indeed be acted upon. like reaching for something because it is there. Um, the problem with the word exists, the reason that I have some difficulty with that is that I think that the term exist has multiple meanings. I know that you've said that it has one superset, one total set meaning, and then there are individual meanings under that. But I don't think that we have actually uh, come to agreement about that. Not that I disagree, but that I can't imagine what it would be.
Mhm. Well, I think I've made a statement that in terms of what I think it is, and that it is no matter what the belief is and that something exists, no matter what definition specifically you use about it, whether it's more of a definition like the state of California, or whether it's an atom, any statement that something exists requires belief in it. So I claim that the master superset that defines something, an entity's existence, is belief in the entity. That's my claim.
Well, is something different meant? Let's see. Okay. Um, See, the word exist can be used in a statement such as um, such and such does not exist,
Mhm.
or I don't know whether such and such exists or not,
Mhm.
or yes, such and such does exist.
But in each one of those examples you gave, what you're measuring when you say does not, it might, I don't know, is your degree of belief in it. So you're
Is
still belief,
that,
right?
that's right. That
There's belief again,
the strength of a belief.
right?
That's right.
So you can't. So right. So that'd be my point
By
there.
strength, we often refer to the confidence in a particular belief. I
Right.
believe such and such, but I'm not real sure, or I am absolutely convinced such and such.
Right. So I claim that for something to be there in our visual field does not constitute evidence of its existence. So in order for you to derive that something exists by something being there, there has to be a belief that it's there, that it exists rather. There has to be a belief that it exists. Now, I would claim,
Sorry, say that again, please.
so I claim that something being there does not automatically constitute that entity existing. Just because the cup is there in my visual field.
Right. Something being there, is not enough words to know what you're referring to. Are you talking about the subjective experience that you're having?
Yeah, well, exactly. So I just like a simple example. So a cup in my visual field. A
Yes.
cup in the visual field is simply a cup in my visual field. It is there. Now, for me to derive a belief that the cup exists because it's in my visual field, I need to believe that idea. Now, to your point, I think that's an automatic process for really for any non-schizophrenic person in existence. Even a schizophrenic person, they just believe strange things. They may see strange things in their visual field, but they believe in. But the idea that I'm presenting, which has been presented by other people, is that you can't. There's no way of knowing whether the automatic process all adults have of saying, well, it's there in my visual field, therefore it exists, whether that was a learned process that happened at a time before we can remember, or whether it is simply embedded and part and parcel to human when they're born. Like the baby, it's hard to, again, if you really think this through, it's hard to go with this argument that it's embedded in the baby when they're born, because the baby doesn't have any conceptual idea of what existence is.
Oh, but the baby it starts developing beliefs right away.
Well, maybe not. I don't know about right away.
Well,
I think it could possibly be a conditioning and a training. Whether or not, but you could also state, well, it would be pretty difficult it's pretty difficult to imagine a baby being, if this is a learned behavior, it's pretty difficult to imagine a baby being trained not to assume something in the visual field exists. But, and I agree, that's a strong argument against what I'm saying, but it's not shown. It's not enough. It's not to constitute enough evidence.
See, one problem here is I feel a little bit like the conversation is one in which what I say gets washed away by a whole lot of stuff that I can't, you
got to go like that. If I go too fast, just go like this and I'll stop. Remember this.
Yeah, I know, but I don't like to, interrupt your presentation of something.
Don't worry about it, please. Just go like this and I'll stop. It's fine.
But, okay, so it may be that I suspect we might have a little bit of a different understanding of the meaning of the word belief. See, my use of the word belief is dependent upon all sorts of things that I have to have learned and in becoming an adult human. I mean, well, it could be learned relatively early in childhood, but not real early. The idea of belief, because it has to do with the idea of a model and so on. So what I'm talking about is when you have an experience, your glass of liquid, whatever it is, in front of you, you see it, you automatically have a whole bunch of beliefs about it. We're not talking about in words, and we're not talking about it being that these beliefs are something that you can easily observe. Oh, there's this belief, that belief, and so on. But it is what you base your automatic action upon. You're reaching for the glass because you want to get a drink. So there are all sorts of identifiable, specifically statable beliefs in that. As you do something that feels a certain way, your belief is that your hand will reach out and accurately enclose the glass and bring it up to your lips, and that when you tilt it, it will feel a certain way, you'll experience certain things and so forth. Everything is going as expected, and those expectations are beliefs. And it's not like those are a list of specific beliefs. there can be a list that can be made of a verbalization of that belief system. And it can be verbalized in a number of different ways and so on. So, so that's a secondary process, but the idea of belief is something more basic or primitive than that. But that then that belief, as we get older and older, we develop more and more complex systems of belief, and they are indeed influenced by what we have been told, which means that we therefore are now having to use our language ability. And that means that we can model those beliefs that we have, even the ones that are automatic or out of awareness and so forth. We can model them in sentences, in symbolic language. So the symbolic language then is something that can be more discrete, like a particular sentence could be considered to be true or not true in a system of logic and so on.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, you said but.
why? So, but you have some disagreement with
Not
what
that disagreement. I think well, there's a couple of things. And we've talked about this before. I don't about the definition of belief and whether that you can say there's certain things qualify as beliefs that I think maybe or something else, but that's not even the point. The point of the conversation is, I think everything you just said supports my position. I mean, whether you want to call it an unconscious belief, a conscious belief, a cognitive belief, something that requires words or whatnot, whatever it is, it's a belief. And to make a jump from a belief to existence in the way it's commonly used requires a kind of conceptual leap of faith. It's a conceptual process that you just happen to believe in.
Okay. Well, there, I think you were beginning to talk as if you agreed with me when in the past you have not.
Well, I prefaced what I said. I said I could speak about beliefs and the different things, but I didn't want to go there. Yeah, I think there is a, if you want to talk about beliefs for a little bit, I think it's going a little bit off topic, but that's fine. Yeah, I don't think you cannot equate a belief in God as a similar to you would be in a belief that when I reach my hand out to touch the cup, I'll be able to drink out of it as the same. Even they might, okay, granted, they might both technically be beliefs, but they are so materially different that it is appropriate to call both of them beliefs.
Okay, now so it's not appropriate to call both of them beliefs.
I mean, I don't think so. They're
Well,
so materially different.
I think that what we're talking about is a continuum. And so, of course, our beliefs, for one thing, get more and more complicated as we live and develop more and more beliefs. And then an additional thing is that since we
It's conceptually flawed.
Since we put since we model our beliefs in the form of sentences. Now we can I think sometimes, well, I was going to say that sometimes we're talking about a set of verbal models of beliefs rather than the beliefs themselves. But I'm not sure that that's playing a role here. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't want to address the statement you made about we have a continuum of beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and they become increasingly complex. I would agree with that. But there is still at a certain point a delineation between different points on that continuum. I could say the same thing about a human life. A human life is a continuum going from infancy to an adult. Okay, but you can't use the word adult in place of the word teenager. Even though it's on the same continuum, they are so materially different that they deserve two different categorizations. And I think the same thing could be said for beliefs. Yes, beliefs are a continuum, but some of them are so materially different that they deserve their own categorization.
Well, of course, we can categorize beliefs, but that doesn't mean that
We'll
they're.
call them something different. They're definitively different.
See, there, it happened in the middle of my sentence.
Well, you misunderstood. You mischaracterized what I said.
Well, I don't think so, but I was.
Well, maybe I should have gone like this then, because you mischaracterized what I said, I think. But okay.
See, I was trying to.
Damn it! I sorry. I ruined your train of thought. You want me to say it again? You want to start over again? You want me to say what I said?
I'd like to see if I can get started again. What we're talking about is whether beliefs can range. We're talking about I was saying there's a continuum of complexity of belief, from the very simple, like I see it, well, it's there, to Harris Teeter is around the corner, or that there is a God watching me. One of the things that makes a difference between some of our beliefs is some are in the objective model as opposed to the subjective model. And of course, that's a difficult to understand concept that I write about in the Mind Body Problem book. But that we start developing, we develop beliefs, first of all, on the basis of our, you would say, sensory experience, like what happens when we do this, that, or the other, and is it likely to happen each time? And my belief that something is in the living room because that's the last place I left it, and stuff like that, to beliefs that are not based upon subjective experience other than the subjective experience of being told about something by one of these entities in our subjective experience, another person. And so that set of beliefs that we begin to acquire, that goes all the way to atoms and gods, is a part of that objective experience, objective model. Go ahead.
This is something we've discussed before, I don't know if you recall. So my opening argument against, not against that position necessarily, but somewhat against it, is that they're both in your subjective experience. So somebody telling me something about something is the exact, it still happens in your subjective experience, similar to the way, you know, me reading a book, me looking at something or whatever, it's still happening in my subjective experience.
I agree.
So then there's also the problem of infinite regress there. Even in this argument, even objective knowledge, even the objective model. Okay, if you kind of go back in time, knowledge is exchanged by people telling you something and people telling him and people telling him. It can't go infinitely back. The source of the knowledge has got to be someone's subjective experience. That's the original source. Right.
Yes, I think that's a misunderstanding of what I am advocating for, or what I am presenting. No, I understand. I describe it in the Mind-Body Problem book as like a bump occurring on one's subjective model, and it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and and so that then you have two big connected balls, one filled with what we're labeling as the subjective model, and the other being labeled as the objective model. But and one can do one's own thinking, and yeah.
Okay, you're back.
So you suddenly disappeared.
Do you remember what you were saying?
No.
Okay.
We were talking about the subjective model and the objective model, and that you had started talking as if I had taken a position that they were two separate things, and
I remember you were talking about a bump, this idea of the bump on the subjective model.
Yes. And so to where then you have two big bumps, or two big spheres, but they're connected. And the second sphere, the objective model, grew out of the first. So it's not a statement that the objective model is separable from the subjective model, but it's that it is a collection of beliefs that is different enough that it can be labeled as such, because, for instance, we learn about all sorts of things, not through our subjective direct experience of those things, but simply by virtue of being told. And then we build up in our minds our beliefs about the other side of the earth, or what's in a particular store that we've never been in, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, see, I would agree that those are probably different enough to warrant a different categorical definition. You know, a definition type represents that represents their different categories of ways of learning things epistemically. However, one of the areas they're not different in, and the one area they have in strong commonality with each other, is the fact that they both require belief.
Well, no, we are. It's not that they require belief. We're talking about beliefs. The subjective model is our subjective experience plus our beliefs about our subjective experience.
Okay.
So in other words, we are driving along and we're going to go around a curve, and we've been that way before. And so we have a belief as to what we will see when we go around the curve.
Okay.
So that is a belief that has been acquired from our subjective experience. It has to do with how the beliefs are, primarily how the beliefs are acquired. But it's a little bit more complex than that, because one can take what people tell one and then process it, work on it in one's mind and come up with something different. But that's based upon this objective, it's based upon this input of beliefs that has occurred primarily through learning from other people.
Okay. Um, I, I think um, my full agreement to the necessity and how to split these two, the subjective model and objective model, where they're connected, where they're not. It's a real in-depth conversation. But in reference to what we're talking about here with regards to beliefs and their impact on whether or not something exists, it seems like this position still, whether it's the subjective model, the objective model, we're still in the realm of beliefs.
Well, yes, remember, the subjective model and the objective model, capitalized, are labels that I constructed in the writing of the book on the mind-body problem. So they are relevant for the progression of ideas presented there, but
Right.
without somebody having gotten up to that point by virtue of the reading of the book, then those words might have other meanings.
Well, this is why for a moment I didn't understand where you were going, because I know that it all came down to beliefs. And my position is that my position is that synonymous with something existing, or let me not go there yet. It is necessary for you to believe, for you to have belief in an entity for it to exist. You have to believe that it exists. And everything you've just said,
Say that again.
belief is a necessary condition for something to exist. And everything you've just said supports that, because the entirety of someone's experience, the subjective model and the objective model, are both belief based. You just said.
Well, that that would be entirely wrong. I could have a belief about what is going to be around the corner by virtue of having made that trip many times, and then find that my belief about it was wrong.
So then what happens after that? You develop a new belief.
Wait, please. Here's where I don't get a chance to flesh out. So again, what I'm saying is that I have a belief that turns out to be incorrect. It turns out that a building that was there, that has always been there, has been torn down, and I didn't know it. So my belief prior to going around the curve was that that building existed. And then when I went around the curve, I my belief changed. Oh my goodness, that belief that I had was incorrect. And the correct one is that the building has been torn down. It's not there anymore.
But there's still belief that, I'll say it again, the only thing that's happening is that you're forming a new belief. It's still belief based.
Well, what does that mean, belief-based? I don't understand.
That there is nothing that constitutes Harris Teeter's existence of being around the corner other than your new belief that it did indeed. It's no longer around this corner, it's around that corner. It's still a belief.
What
You're not saying something else constitutes Harris Teeter's existence for the person who went around the corner.
So there's an equation that you seem to be making between belief and exist that you've made over and over in discussion after discussion. And I think that's where we have some significant difference in usage of words.
Well, I think that I am saying this so point blank because what I'm hearing is something very similar, without an equation without any equal sign. It's just axiomatic. You just kind of like, well, Harris Teeter axiomatically exists, and you've shown it's like there's never any argument or there is no evidence for it, but there's not even a strong argument that anything other than someone's belief that Harris Teeter exists is what constitutes its existence. You just seem to just take it for granted, and that's what I'm objecting to.
Well, but that is right here, I think, is where we have a very significant difference in belief system. And I don't think that you live according to what you're talking about, but.
Hold on a minute. Let me just, can I answer that?
Uh-huh.
My inability or ability to live according to a certain belief does not make that belief accurate or inaccurate. So just because I can't live according to a certain way doesn't mean that my belief is true or not. It's nothing to do with it at all.
I think, yeah, because you use the word true and so on, so that
does not mean it's accurate at all.
Now, our conversation fell apart, and it was because I made reference to how I believed that you did not live according to this solipsistic viewpoint. And so everything just went to pot there. There are new words introduced like truth and stuff like that.
And then leave me, okay, so to what end? So what's the point in that? When you say to somebody, when you say to me, well, you can't live according to that belief system. So my answer to that is, so what? What does that show?
Okay. The question would be, what would be the reason for having a belief system? And if it's one that one can live according to versus one that one cannot live according to, that would seem to be a difference. You could say, well, take any belief system and it could just stand on its own, and there'd be no way of making some evaluation of it. Do you know of a belief system that would be different than either of the two of ours, your solipsistic one and my normal one?
Well, I object to the use of the word normal. I would call it an empirical. It's the difference between solipsism and empirical. That would be that's the.
I would call Okay, I would call it normal because just using the word as it's supposed to mean, that that's what most of the time is so. That's what normal is.
Well, that's a better word for that is a typical.
Huh?
I'd say the better word for that is typical.
One could use typical. I don't know whether there are, but I don't know why it would
I
be.
could also use the word layman. That's the layman's position. I could
Well,
also say that's the uneducated position.
that would be, but I don't think that that means that your position is the educated one, or so.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to make a point. I'm trying to make the point that normal to judgment has elements of judgment in the same way educated does. But in any case, let's say no. Let's say there is no other position. Let's say the normal position and the solipsist position are the only two positions. So again, to what end? I don't think that's true, but to what end?
Well, if you don't think it's true, could you give me a third?
Utilitarian is another one. That what we consider to exist is, I mean, geez, it could be, another one is God. That, you know, God, there's an entity up there that kind of decides what our experience is, and we're subject to his will even with what we see. That's another one. Another one could be, there's this entity called Big Bird, and Big Bird is kind of, it's infinite. It could be this is a dream. Another one is we're in virtual reality. There's tons. It depends on what you believe.
I think that those are different sub-belief systems, but that there's the basic one, the basic difference where we're operating, where what we are discussing is the normal one versus the solipsistic one. I think you could have, in the normal, you could have God, and in the solipsistic, you could have God.
Okay. How about the see, let me see if I explain this properly. Well, before I do, let me see if you're actually doing it. Okay, so to what end? So yes, there is nothing else besides normal and solipsism.
Okay. Now the question
Is which one is better? I remember you asked that. So which one is preferable?
yeah, or in other words, there's the question of the choosing of one. I would maintain that my belief is, which could be incorrect, of course, my belief is that everything you do all day long is according to this normal belief system that I am talking about. But as a part of your objective
So
model,
what?
but as a part of your objective model, you have been able to construct or accept the construction of, as offered by others, a different model, and it appears to be.
Okay. Let me
Wait,
start.
please,
Go ahead.
please. It appears to be something like whether one basically conceptualizes or believes that there's a lot going on that one does not know about, and but is still going on, and the belief system that says, no, the only thing that is happening is that which is in my subjective experience.
Okay.
Now, wait.
Uh,
Now, at this point,
mischaracterizing what I'm saying again.
I see you as switching to a different contention, not agreeing that the previous contention did not seem, quote, reasonable, but switching to the different thing, and that has to do with confidence. Or it's sort of like you can't experience anything that you don't experience. And of course, I would agree with that. But to say that the only thing that exists is that which you experience does not.
Let me tell you, I gotta say this.
Now, then.
No, Bill, I gotta stop you. I don't know how many times I have to say this. I keep saying the same thing.
Wait, please. At this point, I see you switching to something different, even though you've made that statement a number of times. You then switch to has to do with the confidence that you can have in belief. And
There's so many responses. So let me address this head on. So firstly, let's just check it. I live, not only can I claim that I live according to a solipsist position every day and every hour and every minute of my life, I could claim that you do also, whether you know it or not. So firstly, I could just make that argument. I can I think I can present an argument where it is basically not possible for me to show that you are living from a solipsist position or you're living from an empirical position. So that's the first. So this whole idea of whether or not you can live according to a solipsist or empirical position is completely irrelevant to the accuracy of either. Second point, there are a huge number of benefits to having a solipsist point of view versus an empirical point of view that I can go through. And I've gone through it again, and I could go through it again. And the third thing, and the final thing is, solipsism does not mean that I go through life kind of like, does that door exist? If I walk through it, am I going to stop existing because, I may not believe there's anything beyond the door that's closed? That's not a solipsist position. So which one of those three things you want to take first?
Well, the last thing you said did not seem, I couldn't follow it.
Well, it seems to be, I keep saying that a solipsist position means the only thing that you can have confidence in actually existing. Well, for some reason, you keep deleting that word. I have said that dozens of times at this point.
I know
and you keep deleting that word from the definition of solipsism.
No. I know that you put that in. You switch to the issue of confidence when we're talking about whether something can exist, even though you don't believe it exists. Your solipsistic position says no. I mean, you stated over and over again, no, to require it to be able to say that something exists means that you have to believe that it exists. And so that essentially that you cannot be incorrect about anything you believe.
That's
Because
possible. That's
if
correct.
you believe it, then it exists. But then when we hone in on that, you switch to not whether it exists or not, but the confidence in your belief.
Yeah, and the reason why I switched to confidence is because in my experience, in all of your arguments, you have this axiomatic given that it exists, period. So when I hear that, I am going to switch to confidence. It's because I am arguing against a given, an axiomatic position that you consistently take in every one of your arguments that I've heard so far. And that axiomatic given is that, well, things exist. And when you present that argument, I am going to argue against that. And I'm going to show, I'm not going to use the word confidence. I mean, I'm going to argue against the black and white position you're showing. If you're going to say black, it exists, I'm going to say no, white, it doesn't. Because you can't show it does. That's my point. I'm fighting against the position, arguing against the position.
I could not follow your train of thought there.
Okay, let me say it again. So let me say it again and slow down. The reason why I seem to be switching positions is let's take a look at the word confidence. So confidence can mean, confidence can go all the way to 100%, or it can go all the way to 0%. So when you take a position that's what I consider to be an axiomatic given, you just assume something exists, you are demonstrating 100% confidence in something that you have absolutely no argument or evidence for. So I am going to take a counter position that represents a 0% confidence in it. There's still it's still levels of confidence. They're just at two extremes. So I want to say I am arguing against a 100% level of confidence you consistently display in your arguments, and that underlie, that are implicit, that are integral to your arguments. That's why I'm taking the opposite position sometimes.
Well, let me ask this. Is your solipsistic position, is there anything axiomatic in it?
Yes.
Okay.
I would think, yes.
Is it?
What's axiomatic is what's axiomatic to solipsism is subjective experience and something called, and sensory data and thinking. Yes, that's axiomatic.
Well, that's
a given. That's assumed.
That's axiomatic in my position also.
But there's something else that, right, and that's where there's some overlap. What's not axiomatic in a solipsistic point of view is that anything outside of your subjective experience exists. That is not assumed.
Okay, so the difference between you and me.
Pyrrhonism.
I'm sorry?
I say that's a certain version of solipsism called Pyrrhonism. But that's the position that's as far as I'm willing to go further than that. But yes, it's solipsism, a certain brand of solipsism.
Okay, I guess we really ought to, when we're talking about solipsism, we need to mean your brand.
This is my brand. I don't want to make that clear for people. I think a true solipsist point of view would not go so far as to say existence outside your subjective experience is suspect. I think a true solipsist position would say existence outside your subjective experience is a true statement, but you will never, it's like behind the curtain. You'll never ever be able to know whether, for sure, whether it exists. And you can't really know what it is. The position I'm taking is somewhere between something called solipsism, something called Pyrrhonism, which kind of, it's a little something different, but it's my brand of solipsism.
Yeah,
more of an extreme form of solipsism, I would say.
Yeah, I worry when we outsource to.
Were other people. I agree, but it's my brand. Let's just say I don't want to take credit for it, but I do think other people would consider themselves solipsistic in nature. My position is solipsistic in nature.
Okay.
But that's just what I'm. This is just what I'm saying. I'm just arguing against the strength of your confidence.
So do you believe that there are things that exist that are completely outside of your subjective experience? Do you believe that there are people on this planet having lives and things happening to them that you don't know anything about?
Yes, I mean, my belief is I believe quite similar to yours.
Yes.
I think I would believe that. I believe that, but the difference is I recognize it as a belief. I believe
But I
there are.
recognize that I recognize it as a belief too.
Well, then then it seems there's a lot of times where it seems like some of the decisions in some of your core line of reasoning doesn't seem to reflect your belief that something is a belief. You seem to reflect and your beliefs and what you claim is proper behavior seems to reflect an idea that something absolutely exists. Absolutely. It's not a belief. It actually is axiomatic that something exists outside your subjective experience. There are quite a few arguments you've made where I think that's your position.
You started to talk about my position having to do with my ethical beliefs about what is proper behavior or something like that. And that introduces a whole new complex area.
I think it's both. I think I've seen evidence for it with your existential beliefs and your existential beliefs. A lot of times you characterize your existential beliefs as facts, in my experience.
Well, now that introduces another word, fact, that
something that exists independent of your belief. You present ideas and certain ideologies based on an idea that something exists that is not your belief. It has existence independent of what you believe in. So because of that, I would say that a lot of the times I don't hear you kind of acting out and practicing what you say you believe in, that it's a belief. These are your beliefs.
I can't follow that. It does not seem like a correct portrayal. But it in other words, I do have a belief that there are people that the earth is kind of like a globe and that there are people on the other side of it living lives that I have no knowledge of, but I believe that they exist. And you believe they don't exist.
No, I said the exact opposite. I said I do believe that they exist.
Okay, so then you agree with me.
Yeah, we've I said, maybe you don't recall, I did say that about 5 minutes ago. I said, yeah, I believe that there are people, kind of in the other side of the world or in China or whatever, that are doing things kind of independently kind of me. But I think, where we differ is I recognize that is a belief I have. I don't think I think maybe using the word belief very differently.
No,
I think you, for example, I would go to the example. There are certain topics that you have such confidence in that you seem to no longer characterize them as your belief. It is something that exists independently of what you believe in it, what you believe in.
Hey, here, I think that is not a correct portrayal of me.
Huh. Okay.
And it is a slippery, it is slipping between the concept of belief and the concept of exist. You have said over and over, if you don't believe something, then it doesn't exist. But I think you're changing that now, and you're acknowledging that that's not the way you live your life. You're saying that
Just
there's some.
the exact opposite. That's exactly the way I live. I said, I believe that's very different. I didn't say there are people on the other side of the earth who are living right now. I said, I believe that there are people on the other side of the earth that are living right now. I said, I believe. So
Okay,
I believe.
okay, the sentence, we can make statements all sorts, like, quote, unicorns exist. And the sentence, unicorns exist, is not a belief. It may be a statement of what one does not believe. And the way that one characterizes, the way that one identifies or defines a sentence as a model of belief is by putting in front of it, I believe that. So I believe that unicorns exist, or I do not believe that unicorns exist, or I wish that unicorns exist, or I fear that unicorns exist. So unicorns exist is just a sentence, and it can be a model of a belief, or a model of what one does not believe, or a model of what one fears, or whatever.
Those are all beliefs. Okay, there's an alternative statement that you didn't say. Unicorns exist, period. Okay, the statement unicorns exist.
Okay, now let me clarify something.
Mhm.
It is true that most of the time when we state a belief, we do not say in front of it, I believe that. If we just say the sentence, unicorns exist, then the context supplies that this is a statement of a belief. But for instance, one could say unicorns exist, and one's way of saying it would change the context.
Okay, so
Uh,
are you saying that? So it sounds like what you're saying is everything is a belief.
Everything is a belief? No.
Okay, you just said, maybe see if I understand you correctly. You
Here
seem
is
to be making the statement. You seem to
here
be
is not a belief.
you seem to be championing the idea that every way of saying a unicorn exists implicitly implies the more accurate statement, I believe the unicorn exists.
No,
Then I don't understand your point.
I just said the opposite of that. I said, for instance, if I were to say unicorns exist,
That's you're when you say unicorns exist, you're not making a statement, you're asking a question. You're asking a question using the tonality of your voice. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's another statement. Unicorns exist, period. Not unicorns exist, like question mark. Just because you say it in a certain way, does it mean you can still imply it either as a question or a statement? So what I'm talking about is there is another way of saying everything you just said that is actually doesn't require the statement of belief. It's a fact. God exists. Boom. Unicorns exist. Period. Independent of belief, they exist. So it is possible, I think, for somebody to make a statement that this has nothing to do with my beliefs. Oh, crap. Bill, I just lost you. What happened?
Okay, so
Yeah, so what I had said was that, it is certainly possible for somebody to communicate an idea that something exists independently of their beliefs by stating the unicorn exists, God exists. Not everything that somebody states necessarily reflects the idea or the recognition that they believe in it.
right.
Which is and then that's one of the benefits of solipsism, because I maintain that is a strong utilitarian. That's one of the strong benefits of having a solipsist point of view. See, it's very difficult to live a solipsistic life and not be predisposed automatically towards a tolerance to radically different points of view, because you have the recognition by default that you just have a belief in something. It's almost no such thing as truth. It's completely relative, and that's where you claim that comes down to a postmodern position.
Yeah, and I disagree with that.
Disagree that it's of benefit?
No, what I disagree with is that that the solipsistic viewpoint in some way allows for and causes you to have this ability of recognizing that one can be wrong, and therefore being open to having one's ideas criticized. I am thoroughly of that way also.
Well, I had said that the crowning achievement of solipsism is the idea that truth is relative. That was my main point. And as a result of that, it is inappropriate. Now you could argue and you could fight and you could try to make people believe what you believe because you're right and they're wrong. But that's not a solipsist position. It's very difficult. I believe it is very, very difficult to characterize that as as being based on a solipsistic philosophy.
But you're saying truth is relative, and I don't agree with that. What that is referring to is the postmodern.
No, it's referring to a solipsistic point of view.
See,
it's not postmodern.
I was in the middle of a sentence and I got cut off.
All right, I'll make it and then I'll say it afterwards. Go ahead.
That there is the original idea of that which is true. And so, of course, people tried to find absolute truth and they weren't able to do that. And so they kind of moved to the pragmatic point of view. Well, if it works, it's true to that extent. And then people said, yeah, well, if it works for you, then it's true for you. If it doesn't work for me, it's not true for me. And so therefore, there is no there's no such thing as an accuracy. It's whatever you believe that's truth for you, and that is a deterioration in in optimal thinking, I believe.
That is not what I said at the beginning. Okay. That's not postmodern. That's a solipsist position. Okay. To say the idea that truth is relative is based on a solipsistic idea that you cannot be confident that your beliefs constitute truth. And it also is a derivative of a solipsistic idea that everything, the only thing you can count on as being absolutely true is your own subjective experience. And that implies that other people's subjective experiences are just as valid and just as true, quote unquote, as yours.
And
So
see,
it has nothing to do with whether or not somebody co-opted solipsism and called it postmodern is irrelevant. Solipsism was in existence for thousands of years before postmodernism.
I don't agree with that. See,
Wait, you don't agree that solipsism was in existence for thousands of years before postmodernism?
no, I
Ah.
see. The problem is that I kept indicating when there was a period of silence between things that you were saying that I did not agree, but I think that it did not get across to you that I was saying that I disagreed. I forget exactly what my words were, but um, and I think this is one of the problems with Zoom is that it only records one person at a time, and it takes a minute to switch, takes a small period of time to switch from one to another. And so what one might be saying in the middle of what somebody else is saying could be lost. I'm not sure. But at any rate, so I kept indicating that I did not agree. But see, we went real far beyond what I was disagreeing with. So it's hard for me to get us down to the specifics because then the things that you say, there are additions um, and other kinds of issues to respond to.
Right.
So,
Why don't we take something simple?
okay.
Um, let's take the belief in God and how let's just take a real utilitarian. Let's address a utilitarian question that I think has personally affected both you and I. How do we deal with theists? Okay, if you're an atheist. Okay, so now if the atheist is a solipsist or the atheist is an empiricist, okay, how would you think how would the atheists characterize their positions? What would the empiricist say and what would the solipsist atheist say with regards to theists?
I believe that there are more than one empirical, as you say, sets of responses.
Oh, well, what would be typical? What would be characteristic of an solipsist and what would be characteristic of an empiricist to characterize a theist if they're both atheists?
I'm sorry, say it again. I got momentarily distracted by.
Well, there are two atheists in the room. One is an empiricist atheist and one is a solipsistic atheist. What would be characteristic of both atheists in terms of how they describe a theist? How would a solipsistic atheist commonly describe a theist? What would an empiricist most likely describe a theist?
A solipsist would say that the theists did not exist unless he was thinking about them.
Well,
According
Bill,
to,
that's absurd. I mean, if you're gonna, let's try to have a serious conversation. You know the point I'm trying to make. So then
no,
let me just answer the
no,
question.
wait,
Let me just answer the question. That's
wait,
ridiculous. And that's
wait,
a false representation of solipsism once again.
but
Once again, a false representation of solipsism.
it's what you have said. It is
I don't
what,
understand why you want to stick so strongly to this idea of solipsism. We can't move forward in our conversations with it.
that's I also, uh,
Well,
but
then let me just make the point I'm trying
yeah,
to make.
I get cut off so often in my sentences.
I don't agree. You get caught off very often in your sentences. You keep making this. I don't know. Maybe it's a function of this cognitive thing you have going on, but you really do continue to hold on to an idea of solipsism that I have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and times tried to correct you on. So I have a question for you. Why do you need to hold on to this idea of solipsism as referring to things outside of subjective experience do not exist? I don't understand this.
Okay, well, then what is your current statement as to whether anything does exist that is not in your subjective experience?
What is my personal beliefs?
Yes.
I personally believe that in order for, well, do you mean, what do you mean by, like, as I'm thinking about it right now? Would you say inside my subjective experience, I'm thinking about it right now? Yeah, I believe in order for something to exist, for me, I have to be thinking about it. And that's a
Okay.
long argument,
Okay.
okay, which applies to the situation with the atheists, because
That's
the atheist is thinking about the theist.
that's what I was talking about. That's
Well,
all
the
that
atheist is thinking about the theist. The atheist is thinking about the I'm asking the atheist, what do you think? I'm asking a solipsistic atheist, what do you think about a theist? So the theist is in his mind. He can talk about it. The theist exists for the atheist.
well, so you're so I will be one of those atheists, okay? And that I will be the one that you label empirical.
So I would characterize you as more of an empirical atheist.
Okay, okay. And I would say that belief in a God is relatively normal and natural, even though uh, the there being uh, evidence for the existence of such an entity um, is not there. That there is not evidence for it. And I would say that that does not mean that the belief in a God is a bad thing. I think that it could be a bad thing, it could be a good thing, depending upon what one's beliefs were about that entity.
Mhm.
Um,
That's, yeah, that's, and would you say that as an empirical atheist, that your belief system with regards to theists and your opinion of them is similar to people in the CAA group or the Nova Social group?
I think it varies somewhat, but uh, I think there are some people who are atheistic who uh, have been characterized as militaristic uh, atheists that as a part of our tendency to be tribalistic, turn against those who are theistic and enjoy uh, uh, ridiculing, for instance, or asserting dominance over them, and so on.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay, so right then and there, okay, I think that there is an idea that you share and and other atheists share who might be more militaristic. And you just said it quite a kind of at the end of your description. You said no evidence for. No evidence for. Now, you are a tolerant person and you recognize there's value to believing the existence of God independent of evidence. But there's still this idea of evidence of something outside of a theist's belief about them. Now, other empiricist atheists, and I would say
Something what outside of what?
something outside of my wife just got home, so she made a noise. There is something. Let me shut the door. I got to run soon, but there is something outside of your belief about the existence of God that it's accurate or inaccurate. It's this idea of evidence. Now, you are a tolerant person, and you have a sophisticated understanding, I think, of some of the benefits of believing in God, and you as a result characterize and treat theists in a certain way. But because this idea that's embedded in empiricism, this idea of evidence, this idea of something outside of subjective experience characterizing whether or not there's evidence for it, leads a lot of other people to say, characterize theists very differently. They shouldn't believe in God. They're a detriment. They're wrong. Now, that idea of something, this idea that of something outside of your objective experience existing that you can have evidence or not evidence for is almost inappropriate in a solipsistic point of view, because your subjective experience is constitutes, and your beliefs about it is the only thing you can be sure exists. So a solipsist would be much less likely to develop a position that is hostile towards a theist.
Well,
that's a utilitarian, one utilitarian benefit of solipsism.
see, I started to talk, and again,
Well, I wasn't done. I think you actually interrupted me that time. But
well,
continue.
I thought you had finished.
There's probably some delay in. There was probably some delay
I
in
see.
Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, you made reference to my cognitive problems, and indeed, I do have some mild cognitive impairment, and it means that it takes a longer time for me to find words and so on. And there's a lot that indeed I have forgotten and stuff like that. But I still think that my ideas about this are valid. It's but my experience, as I say, is I try to get out a complicated thing, and then what happens is what you felt just happened, that I interrupted your progression of thought. That's so we both have that experience apparently. So you're saying that a utilitarian approach to solipsism versus or to Mike's solipsism versus Bill's empiricism is that one is going to be more open to considering that one could be wrong, and that one is going to be less prone to be hostile toward or negative in their description of the opposite, namely theists.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one position, one ideology, solipsism versus empiricism, promotes a certain perception of things. And one set of perceptions is more likely to lead to behaviors that lead to PSDED.
Pain, suffering, disability, and early death.
Right.
And and I think that it is quite possible and appropriate for one to have that openness and non-judgmental aspect to oneself, or let's say, judgmental aspect with regard to other people who believe differently. Well, in the Bill's empiricist position, I think that that's quite possible, and so I don't see that as a reason for preferring the Mike solipsist position over Bill's empiricist position. And also, I hear Mike making very, very definite statements about things that I do not necessarily agree with. So Mike's solipsistic position does not seem to prevent Mike from being very, very demonstrating very strong conviction about what Mike is saying.
Well, there's two statements I'll make about that. You said the word possible. You said in the empiricist position, it is still possible for you to be tolerant. Okay. And then you switch to this idea with me of guaranteed. Then you said, well, the idea of solipsism does not guarantee tolerant behavior. That wasn't my point. My point was one set of behaviors, one ideology, empiricism versus solipsism, they promote a different set of perceptions that lead to different behaviors. A solipsistic position promotes tolerance, where an empiricist position promotes intolerance. That's my claim. It doesn't mean that you can't have a Mother Teresa could be an empiricist and be tolerant of everybody. It doesn't mean you can have a solipsist who's Hitler and wants to kill people. I'm making a value judgment on its face of these two ideologies and which one is more likely on the whole, given millions of people, to promote a certain course of action that is tolerance versus intolerance. My claim is that solipsism on the whole is more likely to promote tolerance, empiricism more likely to promote intolerance.
And I and I don't have that view of it. What you're saying may be true or not, depending upon a lot of different meanings. We've been talking about Mike's solipsism, but we're talking about now populations. We're talking about almost everybody in the world. And then those who are call themselves solipsistic, which may be Mike's solipsism or some other solipsism. What I'm saying is that this intolerance is actually based upon our tendency as hominids to be tribalistic and to therefore feel necessity to adhere as an act of loyalty to the belief system that is part of the identity of the group, and also that our beliefs tend to have a significant effect on how we feel. So it is normal to reject beliefs that make one feel bad if one can do so. So I think you're making a statistical statement about the world that we have no data on, but where if we found that it was so, it might be explainable in a different way other than as being due to the inherent difference in solipsism and Bill's empiricism, Mike's
you have no argument there for me with regards to the fundamental, the most integral cause of intolerance to be human chimp-like desire to dominate others. That has nothing absolutely to do with the claim. The claim, I mean, to distill it down, is a belief system that promotes a non-relative view of truth, an absolute view of truth where somebody can be right and wrong, more likely to promote intolerant perspectives than a belief system who promotes the idea that there is no truth, it's relative, everybody's right. I cannot believe that you're actually saying the idea that promotes what I would consider to be black and white thinking, right or wrong, promotes tolerance. That is, I would say, a very difficult claim to substantiate, even rationally difficult. Forget about any kind of evidence, which I think there is some.
See, I had sort of a response early in what you're saying, and now it kind of got washed away by
Remember this.
No,
whenever you got it, whenever you want to interrupt me, just do this, just to remind you.
I know, but it doesn't feel right to me to interrupt you in the middle of your presentation. That's the problem. I feel interrupted in the middle of my presentations sometimes, not all the time. It's a difficult kind of communication thing that all humans have. When one person is speaking, it stimulates a desire for the other to say something, and then the question is, does one interrupt or one wait, and so forth.
I think you should interrupt. If the basis of your desire to interrupt is you need to make a point because you forget it, then it should be interruption, and it should just go like this.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I start to make a point, I know that I have not yet made it when your finger goes up sometimes. I'm not talking about all the time. It's just, I think it's a problem that exists in all communication, like what we're trying to have. So I'm just trying to advocate for you to give me a little bit more opportunity to present as I try to give you. Although sometimes I do try to interrupt and sometimes not able to do so. So I think it's a difficulty we're both having because it's a difficult process that we're engaged in.
So do you want to respond to what I'm saying? Granted, I agree with what you just said, and I'll try to do so. We'll both try to give the more time to talk. I personally don't have an issue with you do this. So I really got to run soon. So I'm going to make the statement again. So are you saying that an ideology that promotes what I would consider to be black and white thinking, you can either be right or wrong, will promote tolerant behaviors when compared to an ideology that rejects black and white thinking and says that basically truth is relative and there is no absolute truth. Is that what you're saying?
I think that that idea of truth is relative it does prevent a certain amount of conflict because of our tribalism and our need to believe certain things, et cetera, et cetera. But there are destructive aspects of that, quote, truth is relative, in that I think that it is very, very important for us to achieve accuracy of our beliefs if it has anything to do with our quality of life, pain, suffering, disability, and or early death, as opposed to a good life or something like that. I think it is important to have extended discussions like we are having, and that that we humans, it's one of the most important things we can do, is to have such in-depth exploration of issues.
Okay.
And so to say, well, we just have to agree to disagree and go on, and get
I didn't say that. That's something you're injecting.
Agree to disagree?
Yeah, that doesn't imply you can't continue talking. This is something I hear you doing a lot. I don't understand why this happens.
No, I understand. I'm saying that is what very often happens with the truth is relative way of thinking, not necessarily, but very often. Well, we just have to agree to disagree, or further discussion will not be productive, and so on. And I think that if the issue is important, then that is a bad thing that's happening according to my Humanian values of, that I want to avoid pain, suffering, disability, and early death, make life better.
Yeah. I don't think solipsism in any way, shape, or form, or the idea that truth is relative in any shape or form, says anything about whether or not you want to learn about other people's beliefs or behaviors. I think what it does is that it keeps a solipsist will stay at the table, so to speak, much longer than an empiricist who can just say to themselves, well, this guy's wrong, I'm right, he's never going to believe what I believe, so I'm just going to walk away. There's no point in talking to him. And then maybe take some other steps that might be more disruptive. So I think, yeah.
I agree that is very common behavior. That person doesn't believe the same thing, so no sense in discussing, or walking away, or killing the person or whatever. That's very, very common, but I don't think it is. Well, you're saying that if you have a solipsistic position, that your solipsistic position, which remains unclear in my mind, is allows you to not have such a reaction to somebody who believes differently.
I think that
I can understand that too.
Yeah, I think that if you kind of are convinced that I really don't know what I'm talking about other than what's in my own subjective experience, it is extremely difficult. So let's go beyond now just the benefits I just told you I advocate for, which is sitting at the table. It's very difficult for me to judge other people negatively. It's very difficult for me to stop learning because I doubt to a certain degree the accuracy of that what is in my subjective experience is actually the begin all and end all of what is. So there are tons of just from those three benefits, derivatives of those that impact my ability to learn, my ability to have relationships with other people, my ability to function within groups and be flexible with people. I mean, it has tons of benefits. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're guaranteed. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't believe in solipsism, they're definitely not going to happen. I'm just saying it promotes these benefits, more likely to promote these benefits than does the empiricist position of right and wrong, black and white. That's my claim.
Well, the empiricist position doesn't have to promote these behaviors that you and I agree are not optimal. And I don't think it's the empiricist position that does it. It's our hominid makeup, our tribalism, and our
Maybe.
strong tendencies to fight and so forth.
Well, I think it's difficult to decide what came first, in a sense, the chicken or the egg. Perhaps it's our predisposition towards dominance and kind of authoritarian structures that has allowed an empirical black and white ideology to be so persistent across human nature. So you don't necessarily know which one caused which.
No, but I think that the ability to have, let's say, an open mind is an ability that is acquired as a part. It's acquired from the cultures that we live in, but more complex than that, what we expose ourselves to, like the reading that we do and the people that we interact with and so forth. But that that initially in childhood, the idea of believing something, but also believing that what one believes could be wrong, that it takes a while to acquire that orientation. It's not just the automatic. It's not what the chimp would generally develop, because the chimp doesn't have symbolic language and the ability to advance the modeling of beliefs like we humans do.
I would agree. And I think that, again, it brings up the idea of, what came first, the chicken or the egg, in the sense of what came first. Our tendency, an empiricist position kind of encourages us to be dominant and authoritarian, or did our predisposition towards an authoritarian dominant actions make us more attracted to an empirical position? That's one of the reasons why I don't think you can start talking about what's normal with regards to what's optimal.
Well, I didn't follow that. I don't equate normal with optimal.
Well, I know you don't. I'm just kind of I'm just stating, that's just one of the ideas that supports my rejection of kind of adopting or advocating for an empirical belief system because it's popular. This is one of the reasons why. I think because you don't know what comes first, but the dominant behavior, did it make us more attracted to an empiricism, or the empiricist position kind of promoted in humanity? But regardless, I think in any situation, an empiricist position which promotes a black and white thinking does not promote having an open mind, as well as a solipsist position.
Well, in there's word usage here, black and white implies that we're talking about something is either so or not. And I don't think that that's the same thing as the issue of the confidence that one has in one's beliefs, or how one is going to treat or relate to people that believe differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could see that, and maybe this we should end it here and have that can be towards another. Maybe we should begin a utilitarian analysis of empiricism and solipsism and the relative benefits of each next time. Unless you think we should have a different conversation.
No, that would be fine.
Okay.
I'm still unclear as to what your position is now as to statements that you've made in the past about in order for something to exist, I must believe that it exists.
No.
And okay, so you're no longer making that.
It's not no longer. You for some reason, I'm not exactly sure why. You attach.
Okay, you have said when I am not perceiving or thinking of my wife, she does not exist. I don't think that you are maintaining that now.
No, yes, I'm definitely maintaining that.
Okay.
Maybe you don't understand this, how the in a sophisticated way what I'm saying here. And we've tried to get through this before, but we haven't been able to. That there is it is it's a tautology problem. You cannot not think about something to think about something. To say that does my wife exist when I'm not thinking about her it's impossible. That cannot happen. It's like saying it's not even saying like can pigs fly. It's like saying you exist and don't exist at the same time. It's tautologically incorrect.
Yeah, well, see, this is an area, if you are still maintaining that, I still cannot comprehend what you mean by it, other than it sounds to me like it's an alteration of the usual meaning of the word exist, to equate it with believing that something exists.
Well, I will say it. I'm going to say it again. And I think I've said it several times in this conversation. I am 100%, 1000%, an infinite percent open to the idea that things exist outside of your beliefs independently of your beliefs about them. Please make an argument. Make some kind of argument that I can say, yeah, that makes sense. But the reason why I sometimes take a position and I dig my heels in is not necessarily because I believe in it. It's because I said before, I am reacting against something I see you do that are integral into a lot of your arguments. And it's an assumption that you make that reality exists something exists outside your subjective experience.
Yes.
All
Okay.
I'm asking for you to do is just please forget the assumption. Please make an argument.
And we've gone over that before, and I've said, I agree, it's not something you can make an argument for, because in order to do that, you have to have something to base that argument upon. And then you would say the same thing. Well, how can you say that? What can you say to support that? Well, then you'd have to go to something different, and that's an infinite regress. So
Exactly.
all I'm saying is that that the idea that there are all sorts of things that exist independent of me and my subjective experience of them and so forth, and that my subjective experience can be relatively accurate and relatively inaccurate with regard uh, to what does exist, and my beliefs can be relatively accurate, relatively inaccurate. That is a whole conceptual model that, indeed, I am saying I accept. You would say axiomatically. I say I would accept it because I can't imagine anything. I can't imagine uh, thinking otherwise. I can't imagine any other scenario, including the one that you have stated, your particular solipsistic position. So, so I'm not saying that I have a logical support for it. I'm saying that it is an inescapable way of looking at things that I have, that I think everyone has to have, unless maybe somebody is severely brain damaged or autistic or something like that. And I'm not even sure one way or the other about that.
I don't think I don't think you have to have that. Well, we've talked about this before. You don't have to have a belief, a strong belief that anything exists outside your subjective experience in order for you to live exactly the same way as a non-solipsist would. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. So I don't think one doesn't necessarily mean, if you're a solipsist, that, like I said before, you can't open the door because you're not sure what's going to be on the other side. And I think that's important.
Yeah, there's something here that is.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
Damn it.
This is an interesting impasse that we seem to have, but maybe with time, you will convert me, or I will convert you, or we will be converted to something else.
Maybe, but either case, I look forward to it. Our next discussion.
Yeah. See you.
Bye-bye.
Now we all can see humanity, how much better we can